Good? All right.
Yeah, that's right. I have questions about that one.
Attorney Brown, you're not on. There you go.
Thank you, Mayor Pro Tem Commissioners. We will request a motion to execute the closed meeting affidavit.
So moved.
All right, motion and a second, Ms. Bonner. Let's vote.
Commissioner Guilfoyle.
Mr. Lewis, Mr. Johnson? Mr. Lewis out? Okay.
Okay.
That motion carries with Mr. Lewis and Mr. Mason out.
All right, thank you, ma'am. Are there any items that we need to address, Attorney Brown?
Yes, sir. We have several motions. The first motion today would be a motion to approve outside legal counsel amending Augusta, Georgia's opioid complaint to add parties and claims against Express Script, Optum RX, and the affiliated pharmacy benefit managers concerning their role in fueling the opioid crisis.
So moved.
Second.
Hearing a motion and a second, Ms. Bonner. Let's vote. What did you say?
Sir?
I am present.
Okay. All right. Okay. That motion carries with Mr. Guilfoyle acknowledging presence with the absence of Commissioner Alvin Mason and Tony Lewis.
All right, next item, Attorney Brown.
Thank you, sir. A motion to adopt a resolution authorizing the settlement of all claims by Michael McGrath in the amount of $20,000 and authorizing the administrator to disperse said $20,000, waiving Augusta, Georgia Code of Ordinances, sections in conflict for this instance only and for other purposes. The amount is to be made payable to Michael McGrath and Nimmons Johnson.
So moved.
Second.
All right, hearing a motion and a second. You going to vote, Ms. Bonner?
Yes, sir. Okay. That motion carries with Mr. Guilfoyle acknowledging presence, absent Commissioner Alvin Mason, and Mr. Tony Lewis.
All right, next item, Attorney Brown.
A motion to approve a loss of use addendum to the lease dated January 19, 2021 between Augusta, Georgia and Old Town Pickers.
So moved.
Second.
Hearing a motion and a second. You going to vote, Ms. Bonner?
Yes, sir. Ms. Pooler? Mr. Johnson, are you going to vote? Yes. Okay. Is that your voting yes? Yes, ma'am. Okay, thank you.
Present as well.
I think that's it.
That motion carries with Mr. Johnson voting yes, Ms. Pulliam, Ms. McKnight, Mr. Bobby Williams, Mr. Sean Franham, Mr. Brendan Garrett, Ms. Francine Scott.
And Commissioner Guilfoyle
Full.
voting present.
Present. Mr. Alvin Mason, Mr. Lewis out.
Thank you, ma'am. Attorney Brown, are there any further items?
No, sir.
All right.
Okay, we have
All right.
one addendum. Well, we have an additional item number 3, sir. Are you ready for that?
Yes, and do we need to call this? I guess we're already in session, so.
Yes, sir.
Can we go ahead and address your addendum, and then
Sure.
we'll do item 3 as well.
Okay.
Is the addendum the motion to move the meeting?
There it is.
The proposed addendum agenda item is a motion to approve the rescheduling of the Tuesday, May 21st, 2024 regular meeting of the Commission to Wednesday, May 22nd, 2024 at 2 p.m.
Can you ask if anybody objects to anything?
You need to vote. I need a
Somebody
motion.
need a motion.
Sure.
So moved.
Okay, we got a motion, Mr. Franham, second,
think this will
Mr.
be better.
Johnson. Okay.
All right, voting, Ms. Bonner?
We had to approve for it to be added first.
Add and approve.
Huh.
Add and approve.
Yeah, that's why I
Okay.
didn't say the motion. I thought we had to add it. Still full.
Mr. Guilfoyle? Yes, ma'am. Okay.
Put your ears on down there.
That motion carries with Mr. Alvin Mason out.
Thank you.
Okay.
Item number 3.
Item number 3, Mr. Brian Kemper.
Good afternoon, sir.
Good afternoon, Commissioners. This is an alcohol license. It's AN 24-23. This is a new location for the Kroger store, number 664. It's a request for a retail packaged beer and wine license. The applicant is Victor Smith. Planning and Development and Sheriff's Office has recommended approval.
All right, is the applicant present?
Are there any objectors? I remembered this time.
Yeah. Seeing no objectors, and we also need the applicant to come forward.
Mr. Smith isn't actually here, but the registered agent, David Richley, is here. Richley?
All right, sir, if you would come forward and state your name and home address for the record, please.
Hey, good afternoon. David Justin Richley, and my home address, 3027 Pine Needle Road, and that's Augusta, 30909.
All right, thanks, sir.
Motion to approve.
Second.
All right, hearing a motion in a second, let's vote.
Mr. Franham. Mr. Johnson. That motion carries with Mr. Mason out.
All righty.
Thank you.
Are there any further items on the special call meeting?
No, sir.
All right, with that said, we'll call that meeting to a close, and we will start committees.
Thank you, Mayor Pro Tem. I'd like to call public services to order. Madam Clerk, is there any additions or deletions to the agenda?
No, sir.
Okay. If there's no questions from my colleagues, I'd like to consent agenda items number 3 and 4.
Mr. Bobby Williams.
Can I get a second?
Second.
Got a second to consent 3 and 4. Voting, please, on 3 and 4 as consent.
It's unanimous.
Agenda item number 1, Mr. Kettner.
This is an alcohol license AN 24-24. This is a new location. It's Silvis Manuel for the development outside. This is for a liquor, beer, and wine consumption on premises located at 1201 Green Street. Planning and Development Sheriff's Office recommended approval. Are there any objectors?
None noted. Is the applicant
Is
here?
the applicant here?
I
don't see her.
see.
I did talk with her yesterday.
Okay. We'll forward this to the full commission without a recommendation. Without any. Okay. Agenda item number 2.
Is another alcohol license AN 24-25. This is an existing location with a new ownership. Spence Sasco for BJS Augusta. The name of the business would be Mojeskas. This is also for liquor, beer, and wine consumption on premise located at 813 Broad Street. Are there any objectors?
None noted. Sir, if you could state your name and address for the record, home address and for the record.
Yes, it's Spencer Sasco, 733 East Wahlberg Street, Savannah, Georgia.
Thank you. Can I get a motion?
Second.
Got a motion and a second. Voting, please. I'm sorry. Can I get a second? Second from Mr. Bobby Williams.
I get excited when things happen in District 1. I'm sorry.
I'm like, my bad. He was an honorary member on that vote, I guess. All right, so we got a motion, second, voting. That's right. There you go.
It's unanimous.
All right, and that concludes public services. Thank you, committee.
All right, we're going to call the Finance Committee to order. Ms. Bonner, are there any additions or deletions from the agenda?
We have a request for an addendum. Does everyone have a copy?
Yes, ma'am. Can we get a are there any objections to adding this as an addendum? I understand there are questions, so we'll yield to our administrator here briefly.
Do a correction on the UH.
If I'm not mistaken, this is an adjustment to item number 2, Ms. Dowse?
Yeah, UHY.
Ms. Dowse? This is an adjustment to item number 2?
Yes, sir. There is a typo on the agenda. No, I'm sorry. You're speaking of number 2. I was speaking to the addendum item.
Yes, ma'am.
So I am requesting, Commissioner Johnson, that we delete item number 2 from your agenda.
Okay. Delete item number 2 and approve the addendum?
Accepting that and approving or just adding it?
Approving adding the addendum.
Oh, okay.
There are a few questions in the queue. Let's take some questions before we move on. Commissioner from the 7th?
So are we deleting 2 because the addendum is the correct? Is that what you're saying?
Yes,
Okay.
sir.
Okay, I just clarity.
Commissioner from, okay, came out. All right. So that is deleting number 2, adding the addendum.
With the correction of UHY.
Yes, ma'am. Consenting item number 5.
Number 5.
And is it okay with the committee to consent item number 1? Okay, so we'll hear item 1. And let's consent item number 3. Are there any questions on item number 3? Can we consent that? Yes. Okay, there's consensus for 3. Okay.
So we'll consent the deletion as well, sir?
Yes, ma'am.
Okay.
All right, can we get a motion?
Motion to approve.
Can we have a second? There's a motion and a second. Voting, Ms. Bonner.
Okay. It's unanimous.
All right, item number 1.
Item number 1 is a motion to approve holding the SPLOST 9 Infrastructure and Facilities Work Session on June 20th, 2024, and the fiscal year 25 budget retreat on June 26, 2024.
All right, who's up on this one? Commissioner Franham.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. My question's around, based on having the SPLOST 9 work session on June, when is there an anticipated finalizing the list deadline, or is this just continuation of what's been discussed?
Yes, sir. This is continuation of what has been discussed. If you recall, during our initial meeting, you set a priority for infrastructure as well as facilities, which includes existing facilities and any new facilities that will be constructed. And to break out from that, the infrastructure led by engineering and environmental services and facilities led by central services will present their preliminary listing of their projects that they would like included. And this is just in an effort for the commission to have a better understanding of what those projects entail. And then we would be able to start dwindling down the list. But we continue to receive additions to the SPLOST 9 request list almost daily.
Okay. And then the second question was on the budget retreat. I know that's like GMA week, I think. Is there the possibility of maybe going into July for that meeting?
So that is a possibility, but keep in mind, by July, the department directors would have already developed their budgets. And the goal is to receive the input from the commission as to what the commission's priorities are that will lead the decisions that the departments will make when they submit their budget requests. So doing a budget retreat from the commission standpoint earlier rather than later assists with planning. But if it is the commission's will, yes, the meeting can be held in July.
Okay, thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Thank you. Commissioner from the 5th, Bobby Williams.
Well, I wanted to say something about number 1. Also, Madam Administrator, I think we need to make a decision as to whether or not we're going to include NGOs in this SPLOST. If it's going to be a full-fledged thing, if it's going to be something or what have you. You don't have to make a comment. I just think that we need to discuss it during our workshop. Okay?
Yes, sir. Thank you.
Thank you, Commissioner Williams. And in addition to that, I want to get clarity here. Have we made a decision to only have this SPLOST focus on infrastructures and facilities, or is
No,
that
sir,
just-
not at all.
Okay.
Just infrastructure and facilities was declared just the priority.
Okay, all right. Commissioner from the 10th, Mr. Guilfoyle.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. This question's for the interim administrator, if you don't mind me asking.
Please.
Ms. Dowse, as far as the budget on you have in figure for June 26, wouldn't it be better to have the department directors present their little budgets for the year prior to us discussing it? Would that be correct?
Sir, that would not be my recommendation, as the commission being the governing authority, as well as who sets the priority for the budget. It is best that the priorities that the commission would like to see and where they would like to see those dollars funneled, that the department directors use that as a basis for how you present, or how the department directors will present their budgets. Because if not, then the departments will create a budget that the commission may not approve of the programming that's been requested.
So how do you, let me try to put this correctly. So without us knowing what the department directors want, we're going to look at addressing a budget and trying to set the priority for the department directors without having any knowledge of what they need.
No, sir. As done in the past, the department directors speak very candidly to the commissioners during the budget work session. So you will then hear what their needs are, or what they consider to be their needs, as well as any areas of concern.
Okay,
that
so
information is then taken into account when the commission then declares what priorities they would like to see. Then the department directors go back, craft a budget, present it to the finance department, which ultimately comes to this body in October.
Okay, so that week of June, we are actually doing the GMA, is that right, Commissioner Frenham, or ACCG? Yeah.
Yeah, it's that week, but when I checked your calendars, you will be back or not at the conference on the 26th of June. So
Yeah,
this date was already vetted.
Yeah.
So I can propose another date. That's not
Please,
a problem.
if you would.
Okay, sure.
Thank you.
Does everyone have heartburn with these dates?
I
Commissioner
don't.
Scott?
Yeah.
Okay. All right, so let's do this. Let's forward this item to the full commission without a recommendation, and at the commission meeting, Ms. Dowse can present us with a few additional dates. But I think, just for clarity, Ms. Dowse, is this the same thing that we did with Mission Possible and what we did at Augusta University last year?
Yes, sir, the exact same thing.
Okay, that's when Ms. Rooker tied my arm and made me give her extra money. Where is she? All right, okay. So we'll forward this to the full commission without recommendation, have some extra dates coming to us then. Without
Okay,
objection?
that would be our substitute.
Can we take it without objection?
Sure.
Without objection, committee? All right, thank you. Let's address the addendum in place of item 2.
The addendum item?
Yes, ma'am.
Approve engaging UHY Advisors Mid-Atlantic to conduct audit of Parks and Recreation Department.
All right. We'll get our finance director to the podium, please. Good afternoon, Ms. Williams.
Good afternoon.
The floor is yours.
This item will bring to you the results of the RFP that was let concerning the items for the Recreation Department to be incorporated into an internal audit process and to procure a firm to do such. Proposals were received and evaluated. And before you, you have a recommendation from the Evaluation Committee to engage the services of the firm UHY, who have proposed to do the work for a not-to-exceed amount of $71,664.
All right. We have a commissioner in the queue, Commissioner Guilfoyle.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Donna, as far as the item we just deleted from Markham LLP for $141,000, or just addendums for $71,000, is that the deleted item? Did they fill out and bid on this RFP? I know we just deleted it,
Okay.
but there had to be a reason why we deleted it.
Originally, there were 2 proposals that were submitted and evaluated by the Evaluation Committee. After that process was completed, it was discovered that there was another proposal that should have been evaluated. There was an attempted delivery of the proposal prior to the offices in procurement being opened. And as such, there was, it was originally not included in the evaluation process. When that came to procurement's attention, they consulted with the law department, and the decision was made that that package was indeed received on time and should be evaluated. So the third package was evaluated by the reconvened Evaluation Committee. The results were then tabulated, and that is how this recommendation has come forward to you from the evaluation of all 3 packages.
Thank you, Ms. Donna. Motion to approve.
There's a motion. Is there a second?
Second.
There's a second. We have a couple colleagues in the queue before we vote. Commissioner from the 7th, Mr. Franham. Pulliam. Motion was made by Mr. Guilfoyle, second by Ms. Pulliam. Yes, ma'am. Commissioner Franham.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I guess I'm just a little bit confused here. We caught this when? When did we catch this error?
I'm going to defer to the procurement director who oversaw the process, if that's okay.
Can we get the procurement director to the podium, please?
But I mean, I got a letter in front of me that she wrote today. Today's the 14th, isn't it? Yeah. And that's on the 10th. And I guess my question is, why did we not get this on the 10th and we got it today?
Because
Ms. Sams?
Okay. Sure. Thank you. Thank you, commissioners. You received this letter today because the procurement director was not in Augusta and could not get it to you earlier. And I had to do the evaluation on why did this incident happen. So it took me a few minutes to get all those things together.
Okay. So, I mean, on the 10th, we got a letter here from from Donna. But why was this commission not notified before we got here that we went from $141,000 company to $71,000 company? Like, what? I don't understand that.
Well, let me help you understand this, sir. And I think that the reason why you're getting it today is because, as I stated earlier, when this incident happened, I needed time to look through the courier's notes, of which we receive, of course, the day after. And I looked at the vendor's report on when they took it to the courier's office, that it wasn't last minute. Then I had to go back through the process So it took me some time to do that, and when I completed my due diligence, I wrote the letter immediately, and may I offer you an apology that you're just getting it today, sir.
So if you're, and this is not meant in disrespect, I'm just asking the question. So if you're not here, is there nobody behind you that opens things or handles things when you're not in the office?
And most of that was conducted over the telephone with my staff and I.
Okay. I have a question for the attorney. Yes, sir. Is there any legal recourse or anything you're concerned about, the fact that we put something out to the public and now we're basically retracting and going a different route?
No, sir. What's been done actually would solve legal problems, not create legal problems. This bidder was eligible to be considered, but because of the mail and the opening hours for the procurement department, the bid being timely was initially unknown to the procurement department. The deputy director called to discuss the matter with me. I gave her my opinion. She consulted back with Ms. Sams, who was out of town in training, to say that this bidder is not necessary to be awarded the project, but they should be considered. So they had to go back through the evaluation process to see where this bidder would have fallen if the bid had been timely considered.
Okay. Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Thank you, sir. Commissioner from the 6th, Mr. Lewis.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Although I'm not on the Finance Committee, I do have some reservations, mixed emotions, however you want to tap this particular item. Be it $140,000, the last report we got, or be it the $70,000 that we got today. Either way, I think both of them is unnecessary. I think we're spending unnecessary money to conduct this audit. And what I think needs to happen, Mr. Chairman, is that we just need to make sure that we have processes in place that will alleviate or bring some of these concerns to the forefront moving forward. I know we say this is a great opportunity to set the new director on a course of a good course of them coming in. But at the same time, I think if we look at our processes and procedures that we can garner and have in place moving forward, would do the same work that this audit would do. And I'm just afraid that doing this audit right here, we do an audit of even right now $70,000, and turns up that we find $2.50 that was perhaps wasn't accounted for, will not serve this commission and this city in that respect. So it's almost to the point that I want to use a metaphor of closing the barn door when the horse has already gotten out. And pretty much that's what this audit would entail to me. And I think that we need to find better ways of spending taxpayers' money than to be auditing the Recreation Department. And if we don't stop at the Recreation Department, what department is next? Do we go to Engineering Department? Do we go? So the list goes on and on. Where do we stop? And so I'm just suggesting, for my little 2 cents, that I think we just need to look at a better way of handling this particular request. And I think the best way to do it is to make sure that we have processes in place. And I think one of the reasons we want to look at this audit, because we talk about the candlelight jazz, you accepting money. So do we know that all the cash money is being appropriately deposited? Other areas in the Recreation Department that may have handled cash money in the past. I think if we align this department with all other departments when it comes down to the intake of monies, and we do away with this cash system and go with a cashless system, it would better serve this city, and we can save ourselves. Now we're saying $70,000. Even if it was $7, I think it would be worth us not going down this rabbit hole and putting processes in place that's going to help us in the future. That's just my take on it. Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Thank you, sir. Have another colleague in the queue, Commissioner McKnight.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. While I do appreciate my colleague from District 6, his opinions, I must say that, you know, I've talked to many people out there, citizens of Augusta, who do believe that we need an audit. And, you know, I was one that was on the forefront with pushing a forensic audit, but as far as it goes, I see no reason why we should not conduct an audit for Parks and Recs, because when we bring somebody new to the table, we want them to come in with a clean slate. And I'm not saying that something's going on. I'm not going to blame anybody, but I feel that we do need to do an audit in this department and clear the airway before we stick somebody in this position, and it might cast blame to them. We need to be looking back at this closely. So I support it, and that's where I stand. Thank you.
Thank you, Ms. McKnight. I have a question, then I'm going to get back to the queue. My question is, what funds are being used to cover for this audit? I see the account, but what fund is that?
Yes, sir. There, in the 2024 budget proposal, there was originally $300,000 set aside to conduct internal audit processes. This $70,000 would come from that available funds.
So what does that mean for the money that we've set aside for the operational audit that was approved a few months ago?
It means that there would be $71,000 less from the 300.
That's what I thought.
That's the math. That's the math. That's just the math.
I'm glad you said that, which is why I'm going back to my question. How does that impact how does this impact the operational audit?
Well,
Other than being
currently there
70,000 less.
is no overarching operation for an internal audit process. You may recall that in December, I brought forth a recommendation and a selection of a firm to conduct that process, but it was not passed by the body. So currently, with no further direction, there is no process out there for a wholesale internal audit comprehensive type process.
I believe the concern with the operational audit was that the price tag was a little expensive. I think it was like in the high twos or low threes or something like that, but it was too expensive.
It was $300,000 for the organization.
Can we go back and make sure that we didn't direct to find a cheaper option? Because I think that we asked for different bids. But I'm going to a different question before we go there, Ms. Dowse. When we get the findings back from this audit, what is our procedure from there? Let's say we find out we've lost, I don't know what we're looking for other than what's on the scope. But once we get the results back, what is the next step from there? What are we going to do with the results that we find?
You want me to? Okay. What will happen was when the firm finishes their process, they will render an opinion. That opinion and those reports will be reported to this entire governing body for action. Should they be recommendations to revise internal processes, then of course, we can do that. It would be assumed that you would proceed on the advice of the folks that you have just paid to render that opinion. So if they have recommendations that will improve things going forward, you would take those and use those to benefit your processes. Should there be any other types of findings related to improper expenditures, or I would not expect that, but should there be anything else, that will follow its own due course.
Okay. And I'm asking that because a lot of this stuff looks like it can be handled internally, which is where I thought we were going with the internal audit, operational audit. We'll get our administrator, then we'll get back to Commissioner from the 6th. Ms. Dowse.
Thank you, Commissioner Johnson. In speaking to the internal audit, you may recall on April 30th, I gave an update to the commission regarding our standard operating procedures. Without those key standard operating procedures, it would hinder the performance or even the findings of an internal audit. With that, I've requested some additional time for our departments that control centralized services to finalize their internal standard operating procedures for the commission to then allow what the next steps would be.
Okay. Thank you, ma'am. Commissioner from the 6th, Mr. Lewis.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. You know, when we hear the comments about making the new director whole or giving him a fresh start, I don't think there's any better way of giving him a fresh start than to have internal processes in place that's going to govern and direct that department. So having said that, is it a reflection on you, Ms. Williams, as the director of finance, that if anything nefarious is taking place within any department, not alone just the Recreation and Park Department, but any department that handles finances, you being the finance director, don't you sign off on a lot of these activities or a lot of these requests or whatever comes through? Isn't it your responsibility or your department's responsibility as oversight on many of these things that we're looking at? Is it a reflection that you're not doing your job or your department is not doing their job? Or if things are getting by your department? I mean, help me out. Help me out.
Okay. I will certainly take ownership for anything that I have control over. As you know, Augusta is a monster-sized organization, and as such, each department has processes that they use to conduct their own level of operations. Those are under the direct control of each individual director. Now, as finance director, I have budget analysts on staff, which do not number near as much as the folks that they are charged with assisting during the day-to-day operations. And as such, they monitor trends, they offer advice. Should we see a sharp dip in collections in an area during when they are monitoring their individual accounts, certainly they would bring that to my deputy and my attention. We would seek to find an answer for why the revenue fell off. Did it get rained out? Did the event not occur, or why the revenue is trending in such a direction? But my department does not maintain direct control and oversight over the operations of every individual department in Augusta. I hope that helps.
Yes, ma'am, it does. And that's why I say that when we have processes in place, then it would help in those areas where we might feel that, things are not being done the way in which they should be done. And I don't want to seem like I'm putting the burden on you, Ms. Williams, but I did need to hear from you in reference to how that is done, how that is done. And I think you run a full scale, you run a great department. Very few things get by you. I'm not saying that you're perfect, but I am saying that your department will back up some of these concerns that, some of my colleagues may have when it comes down to this. And the last thing I want to say is this. If we audit the Recreation Department today or this week, are we going to audit utilities next month? Are we going to audit engineering the next month? So we just don't need to go down these kinds of roads. We need to make, as a matter of fact, if there's a detour sign somewhere visible, that's what we need to heed to, that detour sign. Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Thank you, sir. Commissioner from the 2nd.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. My question is, after hearing my colleagues and their comments, how will this audit differ, or what would findings be that the other two audits, internal as well as operational, how will this audit differ in the results?
The RFP to conduct these processes was done based on the scope that was defined by the commission action. So it is a very specific set of transactions and a scope of services that were included in this RFP. Just to read off a couple of them, to determine that all park expenditures broken down by the park with the ledger codes, including Fleming Park, to determine that all hotel stays within locations by all employees within the department. So, and then it also Candlelight Jazz money totals for the dates. So it is a very specific range of transactions and scope that was put out by this RFP. So as such, it will be a very precise, in-depth review of these transactions that are listed within the scope for 2021, 22, and 2023.
And so with what we're asking, or what was asked for in that RFP, an operational audit or internal audit could not produce the same?
No, ma'am. An operational audit would be more general. Do you have, are your receipt books pre-numbered? Where did the copies go? Who is authorized to collect cash? Where does that cash go? Who records that cash? How does the booking for the facilities happen? I mean, those are just some things that I can think of right now to throw out. Your operations is how you conduct your operations, what processes you have in place to do your day-to-day duties. This audit is very specific to the items that were requested to be reviewed by the commission, whereas your operational audit is much more general day-to-day stuff. This is very specific.
Thank you. Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Thank you, Commissioner. Commissioner from the 8th, Mayor Pro Tem Garrett.
Thank you, Chairman. This is kind of responding to some of the conversation I'm hearing up here about the need for policies and good policies to be implemented. And, as we're going through this audit and then also further discussing the policies that Commissioner Pulliam has been pushing that we get in place and the administrator is helping us with, one of the things that I want to just kind of point out, a couple years ago, actually 3 years ago, we had to institute a new credit card policy into this government because it was being abused and the limit per month was basically not being, it wasn't being held to that limit. And so the commission took action. We actually put in a specific credit card policy, but one of the things that happened was it didn't prevent departments from going over that limit because the policy wasn't specific enough and it didn't fully address what we were trying to do. So as we're going through this, these departments and these policies that we put into place, we have to make sure that they are very, very specific because there are always those that are looking for loopholes. And, that was a big learning experience for me up here. And I know some of you weren't here at that time. And it was a very frustrating time to be sitting on this commission. So as we're looking at policies, let's make sure that we're not enabling these policies to be manipulated. Thanks.
Thank you, sir. Final question, unless my colleagues have other questions. My question is, could these lists of things be done internally?
Sir, I don't have the staff to devote to that at this present time. No, sir, I don't.
Okay, thank you. Commissioner from the 10th.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Mr. Chairman, I believe we got to this point a couple months ago because the majority of the commission felt it was necessary to do this audit. It was presented before this entire body, and I want to say, Mr. Chairman, you was the one who helped us get to this point, and I appreciate you doing that because you found a need to get some answers for it and make sure that, our department's doing correctly. But again, I made a motion already. Let's call for the question.
Yes, sir. You're absolutely right. I did support this audit because I do believe that it's necessary, and I also believe that an audit of other departments are necessary, including engineering services. We need to be looking into contractors and their consultants and the whole 9 yards. but I want to make sure that when we do this, that it's done. Not today, but it will be post May 21st. I want to make sure that we do this thing in decency and in order, having every dollar accounted for properly. Just want to know if we can bring this thing in-house. But anyhow, the question has been called, and we're going to vote.
That motion carries 3-1, with Ms. Francine Scott voting no.
Does that conclude the business of the Finance Committee, Ms. Bonner?
Yes, sir.
Oh,
No, we have 4.
did we not consent that?
Presentation.
I thought we consented that.
Yeah.
All right, let's go for it. No, we didn't. Thank you. I was thinking about your item.
This presentation.
Thank you.
I'm
Item
going to
number
be
4.
through before Tim hands them out, okay?
Was item 3 consented, Ms. Bonner?
Yes, sir, it was consented. Item 4 is presentation of the March 31st, 2024 preliminary financial reports.
Okay, so I was just here to give you the year-end 2023 preliminary reports, and it's rather anticlimactic to come in with the first quarter after that, because as you're used to hearing me say, that not a whole lot goes on in the first quarter, so it's not anything that, you know, you don't, bells and whistles and things don't go off, and there's just not much going on in the first quarter on the cash basis of financial reporting. We cover individual funds. I will bring to your attention one item regarding our electric franchise fees, sales tax, our bond ratings, and a recap of what we can expect to see in the near future. We do tend to look at our revenue, at our expenditures more so than the revenues during the first quarter, because your expenditures are much more evenly paced than your revenues coming in. At the end of the first quarter, on the expenditure side, we had no major concerns that were noted as we did our analysis. What we did see is that our electric franchise fees come in a lump sum payment towards the end of March. Those come from Georgia Power, which is the squiggly blue line on the top on the left-hand side, and from Jefferson Electric, which is a much more even keel. Jefferson's amounts don't vary considerably, as do Georgia Power. What we did see is that the payment from Georgia Power was a little over $1 million less than what we had projected in our budget. When we went into the budget process, we knew that Georgia Power's rates were going to increase 12.5% in January and then another 2.5% in either June or July. And so my line of thinking, along with the others that vetted what I was thinking, was that we could comfortably produce an increase in our franchise fees, which are based on gross revenue received from Georgia Power. Well, that didn't pan out. And so our check from Georgia Power was $1 million less than what we had projected, and actually only about $13,000 higher than the amount that we received last year. So that will bear probably some further conversation as to the reasoning and the cause and effect of that, because it was certainly unexpected. But nonetheless, that is only one of the sources of revenue that is received by the general fund, and in a $200 million budget, we should, as the ebb and flow of the year goes through, we should be able to absorb that. Sales tax collections continue to be good news. We've got 2 purple bars, which is January and February collections that are there for 2024. That's through the end of March. So, and just as an aside, the first CSPLOST collection, which would be for the month of April, we will receive that amount toward the end of this month. So it's always 1 month behind that you get your money for the previous month's sales. So we're still happy with the way sales tax is going to date, and we hope that would continue throughout the rest of the year to bear out our revenue projections and perhaps make up a little bit of ground that we may have lost in another area. So the 2023 audit results will be received by you guys in July of this year. It will be filed by the state on time by June 30th. We will have discussions about streetlights and garbage fees. This looks very similar to the slide that I just showed you last week. So we will go through the millage rate process, and we will present our budget calendar to you on May the 28th, and we will incorporate whichever date that you guys pick for the work session that you previously discussed up here in item number 1 on the Finance Committee. We'll incorporate that into the calendar so that it's available for all to see. And with that, this is the index to the packet that is included along with my cover letter, and I'll be happy to address any questions that you may have.
Thank you, Director Williams. I have a question. Are we still having a mid-year budget review sometime this summer? Are we still considering that?
Yes.
Yes.
Is that something that the commission will have to make as a motion, or will you be presenting that to us?
No, we're going to incorporate that.
Okay, perfect. All right, Commissioner from the 8th.
Thank you, Chairman. This is a quick question in regards to the franchise fees from Georgia Power. So have we asked the question why they're not fully represented in a way that represents what they're collecting? I mean, you look at Jefferson's, and theirs are very clearly a representation of what they're collecting. So what's the difference in the Georgia Power?
Georgia Power is typically more volatile anyway, because when we saw like an industry closure, which would have been a couple of years ago a big user of electricity, we did see a fluctuation there. Jefferson Collections is a little less reliant on large commercial enterprises causing a big swing in their collections. But we don't have access to Georgia Power's revenue information, so.
It's a public company. They post their
but
earnings.
Not by county.
Ah,
Yeah.
okay.
So their fee to us is based on what is collected within Richmond County. It is not based on their total overall gross revenue.
Ah.
But we can certainly
But we need to
initiate
encourage
some
people to pay their bills.
further. We can initiate some further communication with them.
All right, thank you.
All right, any other questions? Can we receive this information without objection? Hear none. Thank you. And that concludes the business of the Finance Committee.
Let's see. All right, we'll go ahead and start public safety. Good afternoon. Madam Clerk, are there any additions or deletions to the agenda? Okay, with that being said, if there are no questions from my colleagues, I'd like to consent items number 1, 2, 3, and 4.
Second.
Got a motion and a second? Voting.
Carries with Mr. Mason out.
Okay, that's the longest committee for the day. All right, that concludes public safety. Thank you.
Madam Clerk?
Yes,
I'd like
ma'am.
to call Administrative Service Committee to order. Do we have any addition?
No, ma'am, not on
We
it.
do have one deletion, and that's number 1.
1.
If it's okay with my committee members, I would like to consent 2, 3, and 7.
So moved.
Need a second? Voting, Ms. Bonner?
2, 3, and 7.
It's unanimous.
Thank you, Ms. Bonner. We'll go top to bottom.
Okay. That will be item number 4. Approve change order of purchase order to provide professional services related to furniture at the Henry Brigham Community Center in the amount of $153,473.16 to Johnson, LaShover and Associates, PC.
Mr. Frant.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Can I speak with whoever handled the procurement on this? I want to understand why this wasn't in the original scope. I know.
Good afternoon. The FF&E of the original project was not included.
Thank you.
So this was, in addition, if you remember, in capital for Central Services, $500,000 was incorporated for Henry Brigham to finish the work that needed to be done over there. So what this is the cost of the furniture being moved to the project so that this furniture can be procured.
Okay, thank you, sir. My next question is there any other changes coming from the Henry Brigham Center? Change orders at all?
As of now,
Fryer?
I'm not aware of any.
What about a fryer?
No, there's no cost for the fryer that was included because it was what happened with the fryer is the cost of the stove and the fryer washed each other, so it's no change order for the fryer.
So it was changed from a burner to a fryer, and who made that change?
No, sir, it wasn't changed from a burner to a fryer. We still had a burner, but the fryer was able to fit into.
That's actually not true. It was changed from a 6-burner fryer to a 4
yes.
to accommodate the fryer that was never a part of the scope of the project.
Yeah, that would be correct. Yes.
Okay. My question is, and a colleague earlier talked about why we don't need to do an audit and why we think everything's fine in these departments, and this is a classic example of why. These things were changed. If you can go back and look at this Henry Brigham Center, we'll go back to the beginning. There was things changed, and this government just approved them last June because they were changed without coming back through this government. And I think this is where we got to fix the process and procedures of this government. Now, my question is, this 4-burner that we now own, apparently, is that correct?
Correct.
Okay, where is it going?
It's installed in the kitchen as well.
Are you sure?
Yes.
Okay. Because I was told we have a burner that was specific to the area, custom made, that is no longer used to where the fryer is now. And we have a piece of equipment that is owned by Augusta Richmond County, and I'm just asking where it's going. So you're saying it's still in there?
The company that we ordered, that the contractor ordered the 6-burner from, did a swap out, so we was able to send that one back.
Okay. Do you know of any elevator issues?
The last elevator issue we had in the meeting we discussed was with the telephone system, I believe that, that's a communications issue that we're working on to get that corrected now.
Okay. My point of all this is that we need to make sure that things are coming back through this government and these changes and change orders. This government found $1.7 million for this, a few years ago. And I'm told that there's more change orders coming. Obviously, they maybe not got to you yet. But we just got to do better job of tightening up things when a director didn't even have FF&E in the project, and today we're approving $153,000. Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Commissioner Williams.
Yes, I'd like to correct some things. I requested a fryer from the beginning, and Maurice McDowell was working on getting it in there, and all interim director, what's your name?
Lampkin.
did was make it happen. He went and talked to the people. They changed the 6 out for a 4-burner, and they gave us the fryer that we needed. You can't have events and not have a fryer. It's written down here as a change order, basically, before Maurice McDowell, and I hesitate to say some of the stuff, was let go. He was working on furniture. My understanding is that the ball dropped. Somebody had to pick it up. We initially had, and I understand there's still money there, $500,000 in capital. All he's bringing to us is $153,000. So I think that what he did, he used the money wisely. He selected furniture that we needed at Brigham. If you say, are there more change orders coming? I believe so, because they've left some things out, some things that we talked about, or what have you. The thing is that we cannot have a facility and it not be, you don't have the proper appliances, you don't have the proper number of desks, you have a conference room, you have a steam room, you have a room that waits, and we haven't even talked about the weight room yet. So there are some more things coming when it comes to Brigham. So this has nothing to do with an audit. I think they've done a great job. I wish we could have kept Mr. McDowell on for a little while longer, because I wouldn't have had to have some of the conversations that I've had. This Brigham is wearing me down due to the fact that this has been a long fight. I call him all the time. Mr. Lampkin has told me to stop calling him, but I'm still calling him because I'm a long way away. He can't jump on me. I call up Ms. Dowse about Brigham, and we're going to keep calling folks until it gets done. So I say the thing about Brigham is that it's a facility that we've built, one that needs to have furniture in it the way it needs to have in it. The kitchen needs to be done the way it needs to be done. And I have not heard anything about any problem with the elevator. I take my hat off to the folks that have been working. I take my hat off to Mr. Lampkin, because he's done a great job of picking up where Mr. McDowell is not here anymore, but it was a lot of stuff that was thrown on the floor that was not done, that is being done now.
Thank you, Mr. Williams.
I thank everybody. Thank you.
Commissioner Lewis.
Thank you, Madam Chair. I think my colleague made reference to some language that he had heard about us not, everything is good. I didn't hear anyone say that everything was good within the department, but what I did hear, because I said it, was that I don't think that we need to go down that road with an audit. We just need to have processes. We need to make sure that our processes. So I didn't say that everything was good, Commissioner. I didn't say everything was good, but I did say that we don't need to spend unnecessary money, and that we need to just make sure we have some process in place. And to my colleague down there, Mr. Williams, Mr. McDowell left on his own. We did not let Mr. McDowell go. So I just wanted to clear that. I just wanted to make sure. I just wanted to clear that up, because I didn't want nobody to get the wrong ideas about hearing you say that. But we didn't let Mr. McDowell go. Mr. McDowell left on his own. I just wanted to make that.
Thank you.
Thank you,
Ms.
sir.
Ms. McDowell.
Yeah. Okay. All right. Thank you, Madam Chair. Here we are going to approve over $153,000 for this change order, but yet some of us are sitting here complaining about wanting to spend a little over $140 for a Parks and Recs audit, but yet this, excuse me, a little bit more than that. Well, whatever. The way I see it is, and y'all don't want to hear this, but it's beginning to smell more fishier than a fish market. When I sit here and look at this, I don't know. I want to see an audit, but yet I'm going to sit here and approve a change order purchase of furniture when, to me, it should have been calculated or just put in there a long time ago. So that's where I am on it. So I don't know what I'm going to do when it comes to the full floor. Thanks.
Commissioner Garrett.
Thank you, Madam. I'm not even sure where to pick up on this one. Well, you know, apparently they stink. You know, I'm sitting up here listening, and the comments that I'm hearing from the commissioner from the 5th about I made this change, I made this change, I made this change. I'm just trying to understand how we as elected officials are able to personally make changes to building projects that are taking place in our district. I mean, I understand that it's being brought here before us in order to vote on this and to support it. But, you know, this has been a project that has exceeded the original scope from the very get-go, and I'm really hoping that the change orders are going to be stopping here very shortly. And I know this project is almost complete. What's the completion date we're looking at?
Probably in the next month and a half. We have this, I think we have the scheduled walkthrough for the punch list in June. So after the punch list items, we should be wrapping up shortly. I think this week were the striping of the parking lot. They just finished the gym floor last Tuesday. So we pretty much coming up about 90% complete right now.
I mean, I know I've had, you know, there's been projects that have taken place in my district, and never once did I go directly and say, hey, I need to add this or that. You know, it's always been, is this within the budget of the project? So I don't know. I'm just a little flabbergasted at the I part of it. And like I said, I'm not even sure where to start. So thank you.
Commissioner Johnson.
Thank you, Madam Chair. I want to say that, you know, when we have an opportunity to spend this kind of money on the community, I don't think that we should be dragging our feet and hesitate about it. The Henry Brigham Center is not my district, but I use it. When I was at Boys and Girls Club, my kids used it. We have so many different people across this city that uses that gym. And the fact of the matter that this is probably going to be at the same level as something you would get at the YMCA, you know, I'm a little jealous about it because I want May Park and Dice Park to look just like that. So, but I'm happy that this order is on the agenda because it means progress. We talk all the time about parks and recreation. All the candidates running for office, including the mayor and everybody else, talks about how parks and recreation is lagging and we need better parks, we need better facilities. And here we are having a chance to get one, but we're scaling back on making it a world-class facility. I don't think that we really know what we want up here. So with that being said, I want to make a motion to approve this item simply because I think it's good for the community. So motion to approve, Madam Chair.
Second.
Voting, Ms. Bonner.
Unanimous.
Okay. Got one more, Ms. Bonner?
Item number 5.
Yes.
Present a written process regarding executive recruitment.
Interim Administrator Dawes.
Thank you, Commissioner Scott. As requested of the commission, I was directed to present to this body an executive recruitment in writing. That document is included in your booklet. It's a basic outline as well as a standard operating procedure of past executive recruitments, of course, to include the administrator position as well as other department director positions. So this document is presented to you for your consideration and approval as receipt.
Any questions, comments?
Receives information.
Commissioner Garrett.
Thank you, ma'am. So, Madam Administrator, basically what you're outlining here is this is the process that we should use anytime that we're recruiting at the executive level. Is that correct?
Yes, sir. And this is consistent with how recruitments for executives have occurred in the past.
Okay. I just wanted to clarify that because I heard a couple questions up here, and it was going around in my head like, why are we seeing this? And I remember the conversation around it, but so with this being said, could we just basically say this is our policy?
Yes.
Okay.
Did we get a second? Okay. Voting, Ms. Bonner.
Was that Mr. Frana? Yes. Okay, thank you. It's unanimous.
That concludes administrative service.
No, we have 6. What is 6? 6 is an update commission on each department's succession plan for leadership. 2, task the administrator with helping to have a cohesive plan in place in the event of need for each department.
Commissioner Garrett?
Thank you, Madam Chairwoman. I put this item out just because of some things that I've seen happen over the last few months. You know, you take into account when you look at our department heads as a whole, none are getting younger. And then we've had some, I just know that there's going to be some retirements coming, and hey, none of us are getting younger. So you know, but then when you look at what happened within Parks and Rec, where you didn't have, you know, we basically had to place somebody out of the administrator's office into. Can I continue?
You brought it on yourself. You brought it on yourself.
I did bring it on myself, but you know, Parks and Rec, we had to bring somebody out of the administrator's office to go over to serve as the interim, and you know, when we were discussing that and what to take place, there wasn't a deputy ready to step into that role, and so basically, I just want us to be mindful of these things as we're. You know, looking at the operation within this county, you know, there's been a lot of talks about standard operating procedures and, you know, policies and things like that. So I just want us to kind of come up with a plan, help our administrator as, you know, what are we doing to train our deputies? What are we doing to, you know, have that plan in place for our executive level positions as well. So basically, I'd like to, and I can't make a motion because this isn't my committee, but I just want to start formulating a plan of, you know, what do we need to do within each department to, you know, train those manager positions in order to be able to step in if and when, you know, hey, sometimes people have to go out on surgeries for extended periods. Sometimes things happen, and we just need to have somebody ready to step in.
Commissioner Fran, before you get started, see Ms. Rooker, did you have something that you wanted to add on to this comment, or you just, okay. Commissioner Fran.
Thank you, Madam Chair. I agree as well. I think that this is something that's a lot of good businesses have this business plan aspect of succession plan and who's next following in line. And I think that this would be a good practice for the departments to have ready during budget season. That way that they can kind of look at this and think and put together their kind of, you know, department tree, let's just call it. So I hope that the commission would support something like this, because I do think it's time that we kind of have these discussions as a body to see where this government's going as a whole. So thank you, Madam Chair.
I totally agree with what Commissioner Garrett and Franton said. You think it's something that we need to incorporate with the budget, or do you think this is something that we need to have set as?
I think it's like just an internal practice. I mean, I don't think it should cost any money to be able to. Yeah. In regards to this, I don't think it's a budgetary concern as much as just having that plan in place, you know, where, you know, you have some departments who the director won't train those under them because they're so afraid that, oh, they're going to take my job one day. Well, if you're running your department right, you shouldn't be afraid of that.
That's right.
And so when we're looking at this and you have people who won't delegate because they're so afraid of their job, and we need to kind of take that away from them and help them understand that we don't want you to be afraid of your job. We want you to be able to help us as we're growing, because potentially you may not be here because, I mean, you take another job somewhere else, you retire, or anything else could happen. So I think this is just an internal plan that we need to help put in place.
I agree, and also I think we should also encourage our administrator to encourage the directors to be looking for having this in place, also encouraging their, I don't know how many directors actually take training, but you can't sit in a job and just think that you've been doing the same job for the same length of time without any new ideas and some creativity. Commissioner Pulliam.
Thank you so much, Madam Chairwoman. My question is for Administrator Dowse. Ms. Dowse, would this succession plan not be part of the SOPs that we have been continuously discussing?
Commissioner Pulliam, I was thinking that while it would fall under the organizational chart for each department, several departments already have a succession plan in place. Our Human Resources Department Director has been working with all of the department directors on training the next level, to include training at even starting from the top with the administrator, as well as all of our department directors. So I'll be happy to provide an update if this item is approved. That's not a problem.
Okay, thank you so much.
Commissioner Williams.
Yes, ma'am. While it sounds like a good idea, I think we need to be careful as to whether or not we're getting into the operations area. Our job is to make policy and procedure and not get into operations. I'm not sure if this is something that we should more or less delegate to the administrator to make sure that it's done, but I don't think it's something that we can make a motion from and vote on. So let's be careful that we don't get into operations. Thank you.
Commissioner Garrett.
So I'm not sure if you didn't follow what I was suggesting, that we create a policy around this to encourage this. It's not an operational effort. I mean, it's not like I'm going to our director and asking them to add something to a building. I'm asking our administrator to help form a policy across all of our directors, all of our departments, just so that when we are faced with those decisions, those personnel decisions that we make, we're able to say next man up or next woman up. I mean, it's not getting into the operations whatsoever.
One last comment from Commissioner Williams.
Yeah, but that's usually left up to the administrator. And when you start making decisions for the staff itself, you're getting into operations, sir. Thank you.
Someone make a motion.
I'd like to make a motion to task the administrator to get all the department heads on the same sheet of music about a succession plan.
Second.
Voting, Ms. Bonner. Thank you, Ms. Bonner. I believe that concludes administrative service.
Yes, ma'am.
Let's see, next up. I'd like to call engineering to order. Madam Clerk, are there any additions or deletions?
I have 2 deletions.
Okay. All right.
Okay, we do have an addendum. Everyone has an addendum for engineering?
I do not.
I do not, no, ma'am.
But we'd also like to delete items 4 and 5.
That's what I was going to do.
Okay, you're going to delete, well,
I would like to delete 4 and 5.
okay, can we just, okay, let's consider your addendum items. and then
Okay.
We can add those to the consent agenda?
That's correct. We can do that. Yes, ma'am. Thank you.
Madam Chair, I have a question on procedures for number 4,
All right.
and it can still be deleted, but I just have a question on that when Ms. Bonner finishes passing out items.
All right, once Ms. Bonner gets,
Thank you.
you're welcome.
So it'll be the end of this month when we make that decision.
Okay, I'm ready,
So
sir.
we're deleting items 4 and 5,
That's
correct?
correct. That's correct. We were going to, may I go ahead and do the consent, and then we can come back, Commissioner Johnson, so you can ask your question?
Four was a request by Coastal to delete that. They didn't want to do the presentation.
Okay, my question was simply, how do these items keep getting on the agenda if there's an open procurement here?
Well,
Or
the
am I
item was
misunderstanding?
referred to this committee at the April meeting.
Is there an open procurement still on this collections contract?
Ms. Sams could answer that.
There is an open
more
procurement,
so.
correct? Okay, so we should not be discussing this at any point from this day on until after the process has concluded, correct? Wanted to put that on the record.
Yep.
Thank you.
That's correct. Oops. All right. I would like to go ahead if my.
I have a question
Okay.
also.
All right. Go ahead, Commissioner Williams.
Why are we deleting 5?
Well, we will move it to the next meeting.
Why is that? Because
Yeah, go ahead.
Madam Administrator,
Yes, sir.
I mean, is this from you that administrative recommendation to extend the residential solid waste and recyclables collection second transition agreement? Is this what we want?
That is my recommendation, sir.
This is your recommendation, so why do we keep deleting it? Mr. Garrett, can you tell me? Because it's been on here 2 or 3 times.
Well, and each time there's been discussions around why we're going that route. Per discussions with the director as well as the chairman from this committee, it was requested that this be deleted.
That's correct.
From the chairman of this committee.
Who is out
Commissioner
today?
Mason.
Commissioner Mason.
That's fine, but it's been on here 2 or 3 times, so why haven't we discussed it yet?
We have discussed it, and each time there was an issue where we weren't able to move forward.
I mean, can somebody refresh me what issue? Because we got to do something. This is basically about Zone 1. Am I correct, Madam Administrator?
That's correct.
This is about Zone 1, and I've talked to Dr. Malik about it several times, and he's got several things, several items that he wants to throw at us. And
well, I think that.
Go ahead, sir. I'm sorry.
Well, can we have Dr. Malik come up and speak towards this?
Yeah, I'm going to let him come on up and speak, and then.
I'm not trying to take it from it, but we've deleted it several times.
Go ahead, Dr. Malik. Thank you, Dr. Malik.
Good afternoon.
Good afternoon.
So, since this agenda, we don't have a path forward the way it's presented, so I'm looking at various options on actually also I'm reviewing current contract, what's tools we have to deal with the Zone 2 and 3, because that's what is creating a really challenge, because Zone 2 and 3 are ending at 18 months. But reading the contract a little bit more line by line, there is a provision in the contract. I think we can end that contract this year and bring all 3 back next year. I think that's more or less the will of the commission to bid all 3 together and all that. And in the meantime, then we can work with this transition accordingly too. So.
Any other questions? Yes.
So can I just suggest that we have the discussion on item 5? Is that what we're saying? Let's discuss item 5 on the committee today. We can delete item 4, discuss item 5, and depending on wherever the vote goes, we know how to move forward from there. But I think keep deleting both items is not getting us where we're trying to go. I honestly think we know where we want to go on this one. So, Madam Chair, if it's the will of the body, I'm not on this committee, but can we discuss item 5?
I mean, we can discuss it, but I would rather do as my colleagues here are saying, and push this and wait for our chairman to get back. But we can have discussion if you want.
They're suggesting move it to full commission without a recommendation.
We can do that.
I second that.
Okay, so we got a motion and a second on that, Ms. Vaughn.
He's not on this committee.
They're not on the committee.
I'm on engineering.
So,
Oh, yeah, okay.
I make a motion
Hey,
that we move this
let's
with
go ahead and get-
no recommendation to
And I'll
next
second
week's
it.
full commission.
I'll second that. Okay.
are we voting now, ma'am?
Yes, ma'am. I'm sorry, we got a motion and a second, voting. I was looking at something. Oh, yes. All right, we got
That
an,
motion carries with Mr. Mason absent.
got it. Okay. All right, Mrs. Bonner.
Yes, ma'am.
Madam Chair, Madam,
Yes, ma'am.
this Madam Chair wants to go ahead and Chairwoman wants to go ahead. Can we, now that we've got this clear, we have decided to consent items 1, 2, 3, and 6.
Well, 1, 2, 3, and 6. Okay.
That's correct. And then we do have the addendum items that we just were
You
handed.
want to go ahead on and do your consent agenda?
Yes, ma'am, we can do that.
Are any of the addendums going on consent?
Consent.
Well, one's for a discussion, one's for an update, so
update.
yes,
Okay.
let's,
Yep.
So
All
we
right.
need a motion for your.
Motion to
Let's go,
approve the
motion.
consent.
go ahead. We got motion and motion is second. Let's go ahead and vote, please. All right.
That motion carries. It's just unanimous.
Okay.
Okay, where you want to go,
All
Madam
right,
Chair?
I'd like to go ahead to item 1 on the addendum.
Okay. Item 1 is to discuss modifying the speed hump policy to allow the residents of the property to sign the petition opposed to the owner relating to the installation of speed humps.
Okay, Commissioner Williams?
Yes, ma'am. Can we get Dr. Malik up here, because we had a discussion about this.
All right,
What's happening is that in your newer neighborhoods, you probably got, if you got a street that needs speed humps, everybody on the street is probably a homeowner. Now, if you live in an older neighborhood like myself, then you've got some that own their homes, and then you've got a number of folks who are probably renting or leasing or what have you. So when it comes to the speed hump policy, right now you have to have 51% of your residents have to sign and be of good standing a homeowner on that street. Well, what happens a lot of times is that you get part owners and then you get rentals and leases and what have you, so they're not the homeowner. But our biggest problem is that you've got folks who own the homes, but they live in New York, they live in California, they live in North Carolina. Like my brother, he has 3 homes here, but he lives in North Carolina, and they live other places. So when it comes to signing the list, what happens is that John Urshery has to go back and try to mail or call or try to arouse those folks who actually own the homes to sign the list so that you can get speed humps. Well, what I would like to do, Mr. Garrett, what I would like to do, hopefully what I hope all of you would like to do, is whoever owns the home, or, how did you phrase it, Dr. Malik? Come on up here. Or whoever lives at that resident can sign the list, because what happens is that it affects the people who actually live in that home when people are racing down the street. And I get so many people telling me I can't even back out of my yard because people are racing down the street. So if we change it, we would allow whoever lives in the home to sign the list so that the street can get speed humps. Not necessarily the owner, but a person who actually lives there. Okay? I see Mr. Urshery up at the podium.
Mr. Urshery, you want to respond?
Yeah, I apologize. I was talking to Chief
That's
out in the
okay.
hallway,
Thank
and then
you.
I heard Commissioner
Thank you.
Williams, so I ran back in here. I've reviewed his proposal, and he is correct in several of the points in that oftentimes, you know, even if a community representative goes through the neighborhood to get the petition signatures, they'll gather a lot of signatures from people who are renting and are not the property owners. And so the next step that we typically take is Augusta Engineering will figure out who the property owner is, and then we'll mail them a letter, and we'll mail them a petition to sign and mail back to me, but that requires a lot of time and a lot of work on both, you know, on both parties. And the return rate isn't all that great, as you can imagine. So, you know, my recommendation would be to, if you know, if it's okay with the body, is to modify the policy so that when we get to the petition phase of this process, we can determine pretty easy, you know, which properties are owned by people that actually live in them, live on the street, and which properties are owned by, you know, someone else out of town. And we can make the 50% requirement the people that actually live on the street. I would caution against allowing renters or tenants or those types of people allowing their signature to be valid on the petition. I think that may swing it one way or the other, and it may not actually reflect the will of the community who lives on that street. So that would be my recommendation, is to allow the policy to be modified in that way. And so if we get past the speed stage, you know, where we do the speed study and the speeds have to be at a certain level, you know, when we move on to the petition stage, to just limit it to the people who actually live on the street and own that house, that would be fine.
Okay, so if I may.
Sure. Yes.
Two things. One, the speed humps used to cost you money. Now the city takes care of it. So it's free to the citizens. They don't have to put any money in. That's one. John, I need you to clarify. So let's say if you got 40 people who live on the street, but you got actually 20 who own their home. So we're saying 50% of of that 20 need to sign.
That's correct.
Okay, so like Tate Road, for instance, you're trying to find the owners of homes on Tate Road. The lady had 80 signatures. You told her she still needed 15 signatures to get the speed humps. If you only have 30 homeowners who actually still own, you just need 15 of them to sign the petition.
That's correct. The threshold, the 50% would still be in place, but the threshold, the total number that we use, that number would lower because we would not count. Tate Road, again, is a great example, is when I sent the letters out to the property owners, I sent a lot of letters to Pennsylvania. I sent a lot of letters to New York. I sent a lot of letters to Florida. So,
exactly.
So, you know.
Exactly.
You know, when we're having to rely on those people to reply to my letter and sign the petition in order for the whole process to move forward. And if we limited it just to the people who own their homes and live on the street, you know, they own their home and they live in the home on the street, then you know, the threshold would be easier to reach in order to move forward with the entire process.
And you're saying instead of 51, just 50?
Well, it's always been 50% plus one, so it's over half.
Yeah, yeah. But I can live with that if you got actually 30 people who live on the street and own their home, and you just need really 15 of them to sign the petition to say yes, and you're good. I can live with that. I don't know. Let some other folks.
I agree with that too, because I'm sitting here thinking this through, and I don't think we want to start allowing people who rent homes to start making decisions for a neighborhood that they haven't fully invested in, because in some neighborhoods we do know that a majority of them are rental homes, and I don't think that you would see those decisions being made in the most wise way or in the same way as someone who owns that home does. So I would say if the owner is living in the home on the street And, I would just take the rentals out. I mean, initially it was letting the rentals, and so I'm just clarifying that if we're going to go with what Mr. Elstree is suggesting of just going with those that own the home and live on the road, then I'm perfectly good with making that change. But there's no way I could support allowing people who rent a home to sign a petition on behalf of a home that they don't own.
Yeah, but I can live with that, Mr. Elstree.
Okay. So, all right.
Somebody gonna make a motion?
I'll make a motion.
You can't make a motion.
Okay.
I make a motion to.
I can second.
I make a motion to. Mr. Elstree, do you want to restate that?
Yes, please, Mr. Elstree, restate.
So we would modify the policy.
The motion to approve.
The motion to approve to modify the speed hump policy to only count petition signature, only count the total number of petition signatures for people that live in the home on the street. Own the home on the street.
To make up the 51%, right?
To make up the 51%.
Okay.
Or 50%, the majority.
Okay.
So moved.
There you go.
Got a motion, and do we have a
You
second?
said you second it?
I'll second it. Yes,
Mr.
ma'am,
Lewis did.
absolutely.
Mr.
Thank you
Lewis
so
did.
much, Mr. Elstree. Thank you.
You're welcome.
For that.
Thank you.
All righty, got a motion, a second, voting. All right.
That motion carries unanimous.
All right, item number 2. And this is my Commissioner.
Item 2 on the
Right.
addendum, ma'am? Okay.
Yes, ma'am.
That's an update on the lot maintenance and scheduling from Engineering and Central Services Department.
Okay, Commissioner Pulliam.
Thank you so much, Madam Chairwoman.
You're welcome.
If I could have Dr. Malik please come up. On August 8th of last year, we approved a work session to discuss a regular schedule for lots owned by the city as well as our right-of-ways. And we had that work session, and but we never came up with scheduling. So I want to know if we are to the point now, because calls are already flooding in, and there's certain right-of-ways that are being maintained as I'm driving through the city. And last night I was at a neighborhood association meeting in the Turpin Hill area, and most of those lots are not being maintained. A lot of those right-of-ways are not being maintained. So I would just like an update on where we're at with the scheduling and how we're going to proceed during these summer months.
Okay. Dr. Malik.
Good afternoon. First, apologize. I was not aware of this agenda item, so we added. So I may not have all the information, but our scheduling really is tied to the resources we have. I know a lot of people kind of always talk about resource and delivery of service, but really that's the reality. So as far as, so we do have a schedule which we use the county forces on the right of way, and there are some, reactive schedule. I think that's what Commissioner, your concern is. And for engineering to really address the reactive schedule in a more meaningful, productive way, we need to bring that allocated resources to engineering, which is the inmate force. And so we're supposed to have 14 when we started, then it dropped to 9, and then we went to 0 during COVID, then 2 and 3 last 2 years, and this year is picking up. So Charlie is with me, he can give you more details. So we're working through it. We can come up with a schedule, but we cannot deliver the schedule if there's a work for the resource not there. So that's where we are. I can put the schedule once a year, like we have detention ponds. We have schedule once a year, and we maintaining those ponds. But then we get called all the time. We need the pond cut again. So it's to be honest with you, it's a challenge for me to give you a schedule how it can be done if I know I don't have what I need to deliver that service.
So I have a question to that. Thank you for that explanation, Dr. Malik. My response to that is going back to the reactive schedule versus the alternate is proactive schedule. At what point do those schedules alternate? Because it seems as though in the Turpin Hill area, and I'm just using that for an example. I have plenty of areas, but because I was at that neighborhood association meeting last night, I've got the Nellyville area, Turpin Hill, parts of where Pendleton King Park is. So at what point do we get proactive scheduling versus reactive? Who got to choose who was reactive versus proactive? Because having to explain that to the, 25,000 constituents on a continuous basis, that they're on a reactive schedule when they pay tax dollars just like everyone that's on the proactive schedule, is honestly quite unfair. And so I need to come up with the language to tell my constituents that they will be continuously looked at as reactive, because that's in fact what I'm hearing. And so I have a problem delivering that message.
Yeah, so the ultimate decisions lie with this body. So we have the roads, which are basically entryways or traffic safety issue, all other things. But if we need to rotate, it can be rotated, but it's tied to the contract services. So it's rotation of the in-house forces is relatively easier versus contract, because the contract, the way their prices is going to change with that one. So, but engineering is really working towards some of these area, Commissioner, you just mentioned, Turpin Hill, all that, because this is one of the area, to my knowledge, will never address in the past, and that's the oldest city area and has a lot of challenges there, from drainage to storm to sanitary sewers to combined sewers to filling that. So engineering is working toward that and have already, it's almost in third year now, to look at all that stuff. But we can look at furthermore how we can shift some of the in-house resources to get to that, and maybe get back to this body, or Commissioner with you first.
So I see my colleagues in the queue, so I'd like to yield to them, and if what I want to say further is not discussed, then I'll get back in the queue. Thank you so much, Madam Chairwoman, and thank you, Dr. Malik.
You are welcome. I'm going to go to Commissioner Johnson.
Thank you, Madam Chair. I want to get back to Commissioner Pulliam's question, because I didn't hear that it was answered. Who determines which areas are proactive versus reactive?
So the current proactive basically
and then I don't mean to cut you off. Let's also explain the difference between the two where maintenance is concerned.
So if I heard correct, basically how the proactive is decided. So it's based on really the travelway, the safety, some of the requirements we have with the stormwater permit program, and all that. So that's the contract services, which and basically we have the schedule and is on the contractor to deliver that service, whatever resource they have to get it, they are worker or not worker, still they have to deliver their service. The countywide is the schedule, again, based on mostly ditches and all that. So as we get more help or more allocation from the warden, so we are developing that program. Basically, we had to rebuild this program because due to COVID, everything went to stop, and there are a lot of things to catch up to.
So when we have, so let's use, for instance, James Brown Boulevard. Let's use 9th Street as an example. When you're coming down 9th Street going towards the the Laney Walker corridor, the Walkway corridor, you have in the Dias Park area 2 or 3 large overgrown lots, but this is considered right-of-way, correct? Is that what we consider to be the right-of-way in that area, those lots going on down that corridor?
So the lots are not part of the corridor. No, the right-of-way maybe 60 feet in that, or maybe 50.
Okay, well, we can still use those for example, because that's when we cut just into it and not all of it. Who determines when 9th Street gets cut? Is that the contractor who determines when that area gets cut, or do we contract that road out to somebody? Who determines when that happens?
Yeah, the 9th Street, I believe it is in-house managed right away.
Okay, and so you mentioned that, and who monitors this type of work? Who monitors the schedule?
So it's monitored by the engineering maintenance. So, there are when the program was created back in 2016. So there were coordinators positions was created. They monitor it. I'm working on to address some of the question and concern I heard. So I'm working on, we have 2 vacant positions. I want to modify that to really fully focus on the delivery of contract services. So that's work in progress. It takes a little bit of time to get everything.
So you mentioned in order to bring this stuff up to snuff, we need to allocate more resources. Is that what you said? Resources for inmate crews is what you mentioned to us a few moments ago?
That's the best option in terms of, having financial funds. So the inmate force is, relatively less costly option to provide their services. But they needed to have, the option I presented during the budget, this year budget was let's engineering create at least 3 or 4 local supervisor positions in the engineering. So we already have 2, and that way, we got only then 4 inmates with the local, but it's better than have 4 than have nothing. Then we can have a better schedule and all that. But that was not approved in the budget. So as far as our thought process, my thought process is always there, how to improve the service. And so I'm not really ignoring anything. It's just a matter of make it work.
Okay, final question. How many contractors do we have currently procured to do right-of-way maintenance and vacant lot cutting?
So we got 5 right-of-way maintenance. I believe we got 4 stormwater pond maintenance. Vacant lot, we got 1 contractor for that because of there's only $350,000 allocated to that. We can increase the contractor, but dollar amount still going to stay the same.
So for the entire county, we have 5 right-of-way contractors, 4 ditch maintenance contractors, and then 1 for vacant lots.
That's it. Yeah.
Well, there's over 50% of the problem right there. Okay, I'm going to get out of the queue. I'm going to go, because I see Commissioner Guilfoyle has some questions there.
I'm good. I'm falling asleep over here. I'm good.
Well, this isn't a conversation to go to sleep on, especially when you get calls that we get in our districts. I'm going to pass the, I'm going to come out and I'll get back in.
Okay, thank you, Commissioner Johnson. I'm going to go to District 10, Commissioner.
Thank you, Madam Chair. We look at here in this discussion of District 1 and 2, 85% of the houses to be demolished is in District 1 and 2, and the others sparsely put out through the rest of the districts. But what we got to do is look at a whole, all of Augusta, to make sure everything's taken care of. But come July, let this conversation continue when we start on a budget process. Come June, let's continue this conversation when we're talking about our SPLOST. Engineering, you heard it loud and clear. He discusses resources. The resources he's speaking about is money. He doesn't have enough funding in this department to answer all the demands of the people. But we need to start holding the property owners accountable as well. Hopefully when we clean somebody's yard up, hopefully we put in a lien on their property for X amount. So whenever they go to sell it or whatever they do to relinquish it, we should be able to get return on our money. But I believe this subject needs to come back up when we discuss the budget as well as the splosh. I think the splosh is going to be the main concern. That way, District 1 and 2, as far as your infrastructure, is no different than out here in District 6 and 8. That's the only place the growth could happen. So we got to make sure that we keep this conversation alive. Thank you.
Okay. Thank you, Commissioner Guilfoyle. I'm going to move to District 7, Commissioner Franham.
Thank you, Madam Chair. My agenda item's next, so it's kind of in the same vein. This is the first kind of discussion that I've heard on the proactive side, which is a little interesting to me because I don't want it to be, one half certain areas are proactive and reactive. I feel like we're all reactive, if I'm being honest, based on what I feel. I'm representing District 7 because we've got GDOT in some of the areas that they don't keep it up. We've got privatized areas at major corridors that are nice, that have nothing to do with the city, that people think that it's the haves and the have-nots because they don't understand that the private entities upkeep major corridors in a few districts. So I look forward to continuing this conversation as well during the budget. I'm going to save the rest for my agenda item, but I just think the proactiveness is a very interesting comment because I don't really feel like that's really going on. And if it is, I think that the commission ought to be abreast of what areas are proactive because I've never heard that. So thank you.
All right. I'm going to go. Thank you, Commissioner Franham. I'm going to go to District 9, Commissioner Scott.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Ms. Doss.
Yes. Yeah, absolutely. Go ahead. Administrator.
Was it in February or sometime that we gave engineering some additional money, resources? And if so, what was that money for? Because I heard him say that it may be a lack of resources. So I'm interested to hear where is that money and what is that money was used for?
Commissioner Scott, you may be speaking of on February 6th, this body approved transferring $350,000 from ARP to fund the engineering department's program to streamline right-of-way maintenance.
Okay.
Yes, go ahead. Dr. Malik.
Yeah, so that money, if you all remember, last year, Park and Rec previously was managing or maintaining 40-plus areas within the right-of-way. And that was transitioned to engineering. And that's what this money, so again, the arrangement was we're going to bid it out. The contract service is going to manage. So bid came $900,000. It was negotiated to $700,000, and then was scaled back further. But this year, that's additional fund will bring it to the $700,000 to take care of all those areas which, in the past, Recreation Department was maintaining. For example, Henry Street is one of those areas. And there are some area in downtown, Central Avenue. So that money went into that. Was not really targeted to road maintenance and all that. It was targeted to that additional responsibility that was assigned to the engineering from Park and Rec.
Yes, go ahead, Commissioner Scott.
Commissioner Franham, that goes to show you that we do need to have a conversation about putting all of the grass cutting, maintenance of roads under one umbrella. I'm not sure where we need to do it, but we need to do it immediately. I don't know if we need to stop because I'm not asleep, because District 1, 2, 4, and 5 really need to have some attention. Because every time I was with Commissioner Pulliam, and it's heartbreaking to see that the constituents who have been in their house 30 years have worked very hard and still have to live in a war zone in terms of grass not being cut.
Thank you. Yes, ma'am, and I couldn't agree with you more, Commissioner Scott. Okay, I'm going to go to Commissioner Johnson, District 1.
Thank you, Madam Chair. You know, I don't disagree that this needs to be talked about during the budget cycle, but my biggest gripe here is that we talk about this every budget cycle. Like, at some point, we need to stop talking and sleeping. We've got to get to work, which is why I'm so frustrated, because you can't tell me that the folks in East Augusta or Sand Hills or Harrisburg or even in the Central Avenue area by Payne College and Hurd Avenue don't think that this is the biggest issue. You know, it's actually being used as a stomping point to give the mayor a vote. We can't get the grass cut. Well, he might be right on this one. So I think what we need to be doing to stop all the talking is to, Ms. Bonner, I'm not on this committee, but I can ask you to do something for me. So on our next commission agenda, can you have an item added to host a workshop between the engineering department, the procurement department, the marshal's office, the finance department, myself, Commissioner Mason as the engineering department chair, Commissioner Scott as the administrative services chair, the mayor pro tem, and the warden, so that we can finally have these conversations ahead of the budget cycle, so that when we get to the budget cycle, these asks can be added, and so that the commissioners also can approve it without cutting and things of that nature. Because we keep talking about this. We've done it cycle after cycle, and the same vacant lots and right-of-ways are still overgrown. And I hope that that'll get us to a better point to get us off of this proactive, reactive saga here. Okay? Thank you, Madam Chair.
Okay, you were welcome. Ms. Bonner, did you get that for the?
Yes, ma'am.
Okay, all right. I'm a request.
Not a motion, a request from Ms. Bonner.
Request, okay, yeah, I was making sure she
Parliamentary
got it.
procedure.
He's asking that it be placed on the next agenda,
All right.
opposed to sending me an email. Thank you.
Okay, let's see. I'm going to go to District, is that good? Are you good? All right, I'm going to go to Commissioner Garrett in District 8.
I know there's been a lot of discussions around some of the other districts, but, you know, the South Richmond County District 8 is by far the largest landmass district in the county. We have more ditches to cut, more right-of-ways to cut than any other district in this county. And I know this is my number one call that I get every single week. And, you know, I think that I appreciate the commissioner from District 1 of putting together this workshop, because it's well past due. You know, we've had this conversation numerous times in the 6 years that I've been sitting up here about trying to consolidate all of this into one arena, and for whatever reason, we continually run into the same roadblock of, well, we can't do that because such and such is responsible for this area, or such and such. You know, we got to have you know, Parks and Rec do something. We got to have engineering do a little bit. We got to take some out of the landfill budget to cut some of these vacant lots. You know, it's just, to me, it's just this big misconstrued web of resources that get tied up within the bureaucracy in this government. And I'm hoping that with this discussion with all of the departments that have a part in this, and I'm not sure, Commissioner Johnson, if we need to add Parks and Rec to this as well.
I definitely.
You know, once again, got a lot of chiefs, not a lot of workers, and you know, even when I was hearing the director of engineering, he was asking for help with some managers, and I know the managers were to help with the inmate crews, and I understand that, but you know, it seems like when you look at the organization in this government, we're very manager heavy on the top, and we have got to find a way to get the work done on the roads instead of in these offices. Thank you.
You're welcome. Thank you. Yeah, I couldn't agree with you more on that one. I believe it would be easier for all of us to be able to work with one department who could take care of this issue instead of having to call a few different departments. So I'm going to go to, well, okay, we're done on that. Thank you, Dr. Malik. All right, let's see. We'll go to Item number 7.
Yes, ma'am.
Thank you.
Item 7 is to discuss probation cleanup and reason for reduction in the workforce by engineering department. Also, in relationship between the marshal and the engineering department.
Okay, this is Commissioner Franum's item.
Thank you, Madam Chair. A little bit has been discussed, obviously, around this area. But as we talk about blight being the most called complaint that the Marshal's Department and, frankly, Central Services probably deal with, and the fact that we have strong relationships of communication and relationships between those two departments, and I feel like things have been going pretty well the last, I'm gonna say year or 2 years, based on the timeline that I got on some information. And then recently I was informed that an employee that was a key cog in the wheel, frankly, on making sure that these work orders were filled and things were getting handled in this area is no longer going to be working in the department as a reduction in workforce. And I guess it just brings concern to me based on the fact that we heard today there's 2 open positions. The engineering department's not fully staffed. And I guess I want to understand from the department standpoint of why are we going backwards? Like what's the reasoning for this decision, I guess? And I hate to micromanage, but at the end of the day, this is the biggest issue we deal with everybody up here. More in 1, 2, 4, I get it, in 5, but I get calls too as well.
Good. Dr. Malik, do you have anything you want to say?
Good afternoon again. So it's environmental services were, already signed that department in June 14 or 16, 2022. And one of the things I look at and came to this body is to improve the operation, optimize the operation, look at the workforce, and see where they are best fit and reduce the costs. So this is part of that. By no means it will have any impact on the services, but engineering around service delivering. It's just the process we've been using and to optimize this operation, I focus on with the help of the team I have on the landfill first, and that's kind of more or less stabilized now. So I'm working on the collection, and so our goal is to improve the service as much we can, and we're picking up engineering, and we're picking up all the waste whenever we call. It doesn't matter what time we call, we're picking all that up. And as far as the checking all that, there are other people. We have a litter control supervisor. That's part of their responsibility to do all this thing. And there also we have a work contracts specialist already in their job description. So this position, there are a few other positions I'm looking at. So that's what my focus is right now is on the waste collection part of the organization to optimize the workforce and get the work done through the force I have based on their job description and there's, they're hired to do, instead of having multiple people there doing part of the job and all that. And so basically that's what it is. It's not going to affect anything what we do when our marshal or whoever call us, hey, there's a waste here, litter here, just go pick it up. We just go pick it up. Sometimes we see ourselves, and over the weekend, I see a couple of times myself. I just text, to the Coleman, who is a contractor, and he comes to pick it up. In the same, I think when our marshal tell us, hey, this is the waste here or the homeless here, need to pick it up. We picked up, and Charlie is here. He can give you more details. So all we're doing is optimizing the workforce and all that. The same token, on the budget, the environmental collection budget, really 23 budget, even the revenue was not projected. It was 1.3 million short, the way it was projected, at least what we bill. But the last report Donna presented, the Director of Finance presented, was only 151,000 short. So we are optimizing the operation, but same token, I don't see a decrease in the level of service. Actually, we're doing, in my opinion, a lot better job than it was done before, and there's more accountability with the staff. When I took over, really nobody knows where the staff is, where they're clocking in, all of this stuff.
So you're saying it's a restructuring. No service is going to be impacted based on the reduction in a department that you're not fully staffed.
Yes, sir.
Okay. Help me understand. Is there a funding issue in the cleanup aspect with the probation? I mean, is there a funding issue?
I'm not sure what the question is, but whenever they ask us to pick it up, we pick it up. So cleanup probation, I'm assuming they're collecting the waste, and then they put on the curb or somewhere, and environmental service engineering has to pick it up. I mean, the Charlie can elaborate more because I don't get into detail operation.
The last 2 years, demolition's not been in your budget. It's been out of the ARP funds, correct?
Yeah. Yes, sir.
Okay. And do you anticipate that demolition will be back in your budget in 2025?
Under the given revenue, no, sir, because the revenue is not supporting the services.
Okay, but it's just such a big thing for our constituents, and I think that this is why I have I'm going to say it, I have an issue with the fact that we're restructuring or reducing people in an area that is so critical to the community. And as well as the reason I put the Marshals Department on here is because of the individuals that reached out to me from the Marshals Department and how well they work with the individual in an area that it's ever. I mean, there's not a day that we don't have to go clean up a corner or a lot, or there's a call or something. And when an individual's such committed to the city and to their job, and then we're going to reduce the workforce, it just doesn't really sit well with me, to be perfectly honest with you. And I think what concerns me, sitting up here, being up here for 9+ years now, is that are we at a point where the engineering department, we need to reassess the engineering department from the standpoint of the landfill aspect, and getting a landfill director to take that off of you, because, I mean, you're overworked. You work too much, I'm gonna be real, and you do a great job, but at the end of the day, like, would it be better if we had a better focus and where it didn't string y'all out? I mean, each one of your department heads has a piece of the landfill, and I'm not saying they don't do a great job, but are we not focused on something that maybe be a little bit more important? In my mind, the cleanups, the cutting the grass, all the things that Commissioner Johnson just talked about, we talk about every year, because we're basically directing resources in your department heads to the landfill because we said we're not going to hire a landfill, or we didn't even, or you stepped up, whatever it is. But like, I'm very concerned about where we are. And at the end of the day, cutting the grass and keeping Augusta clean is the most important thing that our constituents care about. And we're cutting an individual that has significantly impact with the Marshal Department in that area. And it just doesn't sit well with me. So thank you, Madam Chair.
Okay, thank you. I'm going to go, Dr. Malik, do you want to?
Yeah, I don't want to go into detail, but I think there is a perception. I'm not ignoring any operation which I'm responsible. I'm working on all the operation, demolition, all of it, and I have, weekly discussion with assistant director. I have daily, depending on all that. So it's not like my focus is one, and I have an excellent work team. They are the one carrying the actual work and knowledge, so and they have freedom to deliver the services how they want it within what we have. So again, it will not affect the service. Actually, it will improve the level of service instead of affecting that. But that I may be focusing more on one another. For me, all operation, I'm equally responsible for all of the things, and I think all day long, how to improve the service and all of the things.
you, Dr. Malik. I didn't know if Charlie wanted to chime in. Are you good, Charlie?
If y'all got some questions, I'll try to answer them, but other than that, I think he's stated it pretty well.
Okay. All right, I'm going to go real quick to Commissioner Johnson.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Dr. Malik, I want to publicly thank you. And I don't think anyone up here thinks that you're not doing your job. I mean, there's not a time that I've called you and you haven't helped me. And I call and email you a lot because there's a lot to do, right? But we get frustrated up here, not at you all, but about what seems to be red tape that we can't seem to figure out, right? Because we get the calls about roads needing to be paved, houses needing to be demolished, lots needing to be cut, ditches need to be maintained. I was walking around over off of Olive Road a few days ago, and a young lady told me that the ditch behind her home hadn't been cut in like 5 years, right? But that's not your fault. What we're trying to do is figure out how to streamline these things so that we're not having to call you. Because if you're getting 6 calls from me, 12 from Franum, 16 from McKnight, you're getting all these calls from all of us. How can you keep up, right? So I think a lot of what we're trying to do is streamline these processes. I know Administrator Dowles presented a right-sizing plan last year that would have seemingly dealt with all of this. But the house caught on fire and the sky started falling, and now her plan is sitting in my briefcase unapproved. So I think some of the things that we're trying to do needs to be addressed by way of this commission passing policy. And then even with like the blight that Commissioner Franum is talking about, if your general budget does not have dollars for demolition, that needs to be like enunciated. It needs to be communicated properly so that this budget cycle we can get you some money. But the frustration comes from when we're trying to get things done and it doesn't happen. It's not on you. It's things that we have to try to figure out. So I don't want you thinking that we're saying you're not doing your job. We're trying to help you. But anything that you need to make this stuff go a little bit more efficiently, let us know and be liberal at telling us. Okay? Thank you, Madam Chair.
You're so welcome. Okay. I don't see anybody else in the queue, so we'll take this and receive it as information.
No objection.
Okay.
And for the record, we'll do number 2 on the addendum the same way, okay?
That's correct. Yes, ma'am.
That's Mr. Garrett.
That's Commissioner, Mayor Pro Tem Garrett.
Mm-hmm. And you?
Yes, sir. Yes, ma'am. All right. I guess we're pretty much done.
Okay, that's it.
Thank you,
Madam
everyone.
Madam.
Yes, ma'am.
Clerk, I just, points of privilege, I would like to wish my colleague, Kathy Smith McKnight, what's your other name? A happy birthday.
Is that today?
It was yesterday.
Oh, okay.
Thank you, thank you. Thank you, Commissioner Scott. I appreciate that. Another day and another year older. Okay, well, that concludes engineering, and that's it for the day. Thank y'all all.